So my research in terms of entrepreneurship is predominantly focused on entrepreneurship within established companies. Why within established companies? It's because established companies are a huge bank of resources. They have established processes and guidelines and experience in turning ideas into actual products. They also have something about that you might argue that if you separate the different tasks of entrepreneurship, so first getting the idea and second turning it into a product or services, within companies you might be able to utilize different departments or different individuals who have different expertise, so you would get a comparative advantage or a greater value of doing that. So that's my focus of why inside companies. But the reason I look at established companies is that established companies are basically just a way of organizing behavior. So you could have a certain organizational design system that streamlines production and delivery to market. So it's a very rule-driven, process-oriented, fully formalized company. However, if you implement organizational design along those lines, you might be really efficient at getting your product to market, but you might be less efficient in developing new products. So it's interesting to look at human capital, so the employees. How do their characteristics, how did that complement the organizational design of the company? So could we tweak the organizational design to get more out of our employees in terms of discovering and developing new products? Or should we rather keep our organizational design and then hire different individuals? I think the fit between those two is really interesting. And it's interesting in terms of how do companies stay competitively ahead of simply producing to the lowest marginal cost. So when you talk about women and entrepreneurship, there's two academic reasons at least to be interested in this. There's first the consistent finding that women are less likely to be self-employed. That's interesting because the reason for women to be less likely to be self-employed might be that they're more risk adverse or they have family obligations, but that's in terms of self-employment. So if you say that instead of talking about self-employment as entrepreneurship, but you talk about entrepreneurial behavior, then acting entrepreneurial within an established company reduces some of the risk. So you won't necessarily risk the income of the family because the company shoulders some of the risk, and there might be other aspects. You might be able to be an entrepreneur inside the company at a 9-to-5 basis, which you can't outside, obviously. So that's the first interesting aspect. The second interesting aspect is gender in terms of top management. So in terms of, can we have more entrepreneurial or innovative firms if we take a look at how is the top management, how is it divided between male and female top managers. So with Nikolai Foss, we did a large study about female top managers and the company's entrepreneurial output. So how many new products and services do the companies launch? And we find that the popular and maybe classic understanding of diversity and including women in top management team as a good thing is far more complex than that. Actually, we see that when companies introduce the first women into the top management team, we get a negative effect in terms of innovative output. However, that effect goes away when you get more women in the top management team. But, and this is important, the negative effect turns positive before the women are the majority. The reason for this, or what we speculate is the reason, is that it has to do with social categorization. So when the first female enters the top management team, she's categorized as female top managers as opposed to the male top managers. If, however, the first female top managers are able to recategorize themselves as just top managers, then they're able to influence the decision making more in the company. So they're not sidelined. And then a logical question is, but why does more female involvement in the upper echelon lead to more entrepreneurship? And the reason that it is plausible that women would have a positive effect is that on average there's strong evidence that female managers lead differently than men. So they're less order-based and they're more communicative and they're more inclusive. which are all aspects of leadership that would stimulate entrepreneurial behavior from employees. So it might not be a classic argument of saying women are more entrepreneurial, but it might be that the indirect effect of having more female top managers stimulates entrepreneurship. That is an interesting aspect of it, rather than talking about gender quotas in terms of firm performance, which is the ultimate result of a long line of different activities. We might actually be able to say, if we take an objective look at what we know about female managers and male managers might be better at some aspects, and female managers might be better at other aspects. A practical example of this would be hard, because what I do is quantitative large N. So we don't observe the actual behavior. We look at tendency across a lot of different firms and then see, do we see a correlation between the proportion of female top managers and the average innovativeness of the company. So dreaming up an example would be at best hypothetical and at worst simply made up. Why look at women and entrepreneurship? Why I look at it is definitely not because it's more important than other aspects. I think it's an interesting aspect of a debate that's already ongoing. I think that's one of my main motivations. So combining two literatures that have a lot to say about an aspect but hardly ever talked directly to each other is interesting. On a broader societal level, you could say it becomes tricky because it's all about supply and demand. So you could say, okay, we have an untapped entrepreneurial resource and women don't become entrepreneurs. But that again would be far too simple to say. So I think it's more interesting to identify or at least get indications that you might have gender-based advantages in terms of entrepreneurship for women, in terms of their leadership style, not that they're better at discovering or exploiting, but simply that they're, on average, they're better at incubating or stimulating entrepreneurial behavior, and that obviously leads to more. And then whether or not the company is able to turn that into wealth generation depends on a lot of other factors. But I think that aspect is interesting when we're already discussing female representation in top management.